If you buy collagen every month, there is something the label is very unlikely to tell you. The latest major meta-analysis on collagen and skin aging looked at 23 randomized trials and reached a remarkably cautious conclusion. Right now, there is no clinical evidence strong enough to support collagen supplements as a proven way to prevent or treat skin aging. And that is where the story gets interesting, because the market sounds much more certain than the science does. There are smaller studies that show visible improvements, but the stronger claims often appear in lower quality or industry-linked research. So this is not a story about collagen being fake. It is a story about a product category being sold with far more confidence than the current evidence really allows. I'm Sophia River, your guide here on Old World Remedies, where we explore forgotten household practices for modern living. And in this video, I want to walk you through 4 older answers people relied on long before collagen powder took over, what newer research actually says about today's supplements, and why the strongest answer may have less to do with a supplement shelf, and much more to do with the way older kitchens actually fed people. Now, I want to be fair from the beginning. This is not one of those videos that says, collagen is fake, and everyone taking it is being fooled. The evidence is more nuanced than that. There does seem to be a real signal in some studies. One 2024 clinical trial, for example, did report improvements in skin hydration, elasticity, and wrinkles after 12 weeks. But the overall picture is still inconsistent. The stronger claims are often tied to weaker or industry-linked evidence, and the market has clearly moved much faster than the science. And that is exactly why this topic matters. Because once you stop asking, does collagen work, yes or no? The better question becomes, what were people doing before this turned into a monthly purchase? Before I get to the 4 older answers, let me clear up one point that gets muddled almost every time this topic comes up. Plants do not contain collagen. Collagen is an animal protein. What plants can do is support the body's own collagen production through protein, vitamin C, and other nutrients. That distinction matters, and we will come back to it, because in the end it turns out to be one of the biggest parts of the story. So let's start with the first answer. The first answer is easy to overlook, because it does not sound like a wellness strategy at all. It just sounds like old-fashioned cooking. Older kitchens used much more of the whole animal than most modern kitchens do. Skin was often left on. Bones were not treated like waste. Tougher cuts that needed long cooking were completely normal. Things like shanks, oxtail, fish skin, and chicken bones were not niche health foods. They were simply part of practical cooking. And that creates a strange modern irony. A lot of people now buy collagen during the day, then throw away the very parts older households kept on purpose. If your grandmother cooked a whole chicken, she often used much more of it than people do now. If someone made soup, it was not unusual for the bones and scraps to matter almost as much as the neat pieces of meat. And if a cut was tough, that did not make it nutritionally uninteresting. It usually just meant it needed time. That does not mean these foods were identical to a measured scoop of hydrolyzed collagen. They were not. But they belonged to a pattern of eating that naturally included connective tissue and gelatin-rich parts, instead of trimming them away as if they had no value. That is the first piece of the puzzle. Before collagen became a product, older kitchens often kept the very parts modern food culture taught us to remove. But once those ingredients met heat and time, something even more revealing happened. The second answer is probably the one that comes closest to the modern collagen conversation: real stock and long-simmered broth. I mean a real stock pot, not a cube, not a salty powder, not something that tastes faintly of chicken. I mean an actual pot that starts with bones, joints, skin, carcasses, maybe a tougher cut, and then sits there long enough to change. Older cooks knew what that change looked like. The broth deepened, it got body, and when you chilled it, sometimes it set. That wobble told you something had come out of the ingredients that was not there in the water at the start. That was gelatin, drawn out of collagen by heat and time. Now, I do want to keep one important distinction clear. A homemade broth is not scientifically interchangeable with a commercial collagen supplement. Broths vary too much for that, and the studies on collagen are usually studying standardized collagen peptides, not someone's soup pot. So I would never say that one bowl of broth simply replaces a supplement one for one. What I would say instead is simpler and probably more useful. Stock helps you see what the product category replaced. Before collagen was something you stirred into coffee, it was hidden inside the way people cooked. It lived inside a slow, slightly messy, very ordinary kitchen habit, in the sort of household where scraps were saved, stock pots were reused, and the family table carried more of the burden than a branded product ever could. And this is where the modern version starts to look different. A scoop is easier to sell than a stock pot. A branded morning ritual is easier to sell than the advice to use the bones. And a powder looks clean and modern in a way a simmering pot never does. That is not just a nutritional shift. It is a cultural one. But even stock and broth were not the whole answer. Because older kitchens had another category of food that most people have almost forgotten. The third answer is gelatin-rich restorative dishes. This is the part that sounds a little unusual now, but it tells you a great deal about how people once thought about nourishment. If you look through older English language cookbooks and household manuals, especially the ones written for people recovering from illness, you find a whole class of dishes that most people barely recognize today. Things like meat jellies, aspics, strong broths, and even calf's foot jelly. And I like this example because it breaks the modern illusion that collagen began as a beauty ritual. It did not. In older kitchens, gelatin-rich dishes were associated much more with nourishment, convalescence, and rebuilding strength than with appearance. The emotional frame was completely different. People were not trying to look younger from within. They were feeding someone they believed needed something soft, strengthening, sustaining, and easy to take in. Now, I am not saying calf's foot jelly was some elegant scientific delivery system for collagen peptides. It obviously was not. But it does show you that gelatin-rich cooking was once familiar household logic, not a niche supplement habit. And there is something important hidden inside that old logic. A lot of modern product categories are built by pulling one ingredient out of a wider kitchen practice, then selling the ingredient back to us as if it were the whole story. That is often what has happened here. Older households did not isolate collagen and build an identity around it. They built it into food. And once you notice that, you start to see the modern category more clearly. It is not always inventing something new. Very often it is repackaging something older in a form that is easier to brand, easier to sell, and easier to repeat every morning. But even this is still not the biggest answer. Because the most important thing people had before collagen powder was not a single dish at all. The fourth answer is the one that matters most. It is the daily food pattern that supported collagen in the first place. If you remember only one thing from this video, let it be this. The most important thing people used before collagen powder was not one miracle food. It was a pattern of eating that supported collagen every day. In simple terms, that means enough protein, enough vitamin C, and real meals that bring in trace minerals and actual nourishment instead of building the whole conversation around one branded ingredient. Vitamin C matters here because collagen formation depends on it, which is one reason deficiency states like scurvy affected skin, gums, blood vessels, and wound healing so dramatically. And this is where the whole story widens out. Because the body is not sitting there waiting for a pink tub to rescue it. It is constantly building, repairing, and maintaining tissue. That depends on raw materials, helper nutrients, and the overall conditions you give it. So, yes, collagen itself is animal only. But that does not mean the only useful question is whether you are swallowing collagen directly. A much better question is whether your overall way of eating supports the body that has to build and maintain collagen every day. Are you eating enough protein overall? Are fruits and vegetables doing any real work in your meals? Are you getting enough vitamin C to support collagen synthesis? Are you relying on one supplement to compensate for weak sleep, too much stress, too little movement, too much sun exposure, or a generally poor diet? That is the part no tub can replace. And to me, that is exactly why collagen became such a successful modern product category. It takes a large, messy, emotionally loaded problem, aging, stiffness, recovery, skin changes, the fear of visible decline, and offers one tidy object you can buy. People are not only buying collagen. Very often they are buying reassurance. And I say that without judgment, because I understand why the category is attractive. A supplement is easier to buy than a new kitchen habit. A scoop feels more precise than a broth. A branded ritual feels more controllable than the vague but correct advice to eat well over time. For some people, a supplement may genuinely be convenient and worth trying. But this is where I think the modern conversation needs a little more honesty. In the United States, collagen powders are sold as dietary supplements, not as drugs. That means they are not pre-approved by the FDA for effectiveness before reaching the market. So the category naturally fills up with polished packaging, soft support language, and stronger emotional messaging than the underlying evidence can always carry. That does not make every product dishonest. But it does mean the marketing voice usually arrives louder than the scientific one. So where does that leave someone who is trying to be sensible about all this? Probably in a better place than hype does. If you are curious about collagen, start with the foundation first. Ask whether your overall diet really supports the body you are asking so much from. Ask whether you are eating enough protein and whether vitamin C and other supportive nutrients are showing up consistently in real food. And ask whether your food has become so polished that the slower, less photogenic, more useful parts of cooking have quietly disappeared. And if you eat animal foods, ask yourself one slightly uncomfortable question. Have you replaced kitchen logic with a product simply because the product is easier to buy than the habit is to rebuild? That is a harder question than, which brand is best? But it is also the one that gets you somewhere. Because before collagen powder, people had whole animal cooking, real stock, gelatin-rich restorative dishes, and above all, a less fragmented way of thinking about nourishment. They did not separate everything into product categories first, then try to buy back what daily life once included more naturally. That does not mean the past was perfect. It just means the past was often less processed, less trimmed, and a little less hypnotized by packaging. So here is my gentle challenge for you this week. Before you buy the next tub, make one pot of real bone broth. Use the bones and scraps from a roasted chicken or turkey, the very parts most people usually throw away. Or at least start noticing what you've been trimming away without thinking. You may still decide a supplement has a place in your life, but at least you will be deciding from a steadier place, with better questions and a little less marketing in the room. If this reminded you of something your family used to make, or if there is an old dish that suddenly makes more sense now, tell me in the comments. I read those. And if you enjoy this kind of thoughtful, evidence-aware look at old household wisdom and modern supplement trends, subscribe to Old World Remedies. Thank you for spending this time with me.